My name is Vera Aronow. I'm on the board of Rivertown Film, and I want to extend a welcome to everyone here on behalf of Rivertown. Thank you for coming. And I also want to thank our sponsor, the New York State Council on the Arts. I'm thrilled to be here for this conversation, and thrilled to hear what our moderator, Joanna Faith Almiron, also known as Kapwa, has to ask everyone and get the conversation going. As most of you know, she'll ask a number of questions, and then of all the filmmakers, and then we'll open it up to questions from the audience. So you can put your questions in chat at that point, or raise your hand electronically or physically. And it's a small group, so I'm sure we'll get to recognize everyone. And just remember to keep your mic on mute if you're not speaking. And I think that's everything. So Kapwa, thank you.
Hello, everybody. Aloha. I know through trial and error in terms of teaching online that trying to do a group hello is like not the greatest. But I do want to just kind of open up the space by acknowledging the Lenape people whose land I'm on right now, and also to acknowledge all of the ancestors and the descendants to come, and the folks who brought us here together in this moment in our virtual space. Religious or not, if we could just like take a moment to just come into the space together. So I'm not going to necessarily like signify particular traditions outside of, I'm just inviting you to just take 3 deep breaths with me, so we can just sort of like have a true cipher. Thank you. Aloha. So I first want to say thank you to the Rivertown Film, particularly Vera, for reaching out to me. I was born and raised in Rockland County, Valley Cottage, in the New City, and went many places in between then and now. And it's exciting for me to build creative and intellectual community with those who have roots here. And so I just wanted to thank Vera, Aronow, Juliana, Roth, and Matthew Seek for also helping out with the tech and just helping me kind of ease into the community and being the ambassadors for me to enter the space here. I also want to congratulate all the filmmakers, especially those who are making their debut, and to thank you for bringing your ideas to the broader world and to the community. I'm super excited about the conversation we're going to have. And I just wanted to offer like sort of a synthesis of what I saw in terms of the pattern, like the collection of tonight. One of the things that really struck me was the idea of like COVID aesthetic. Like if you look in my closet, I definitely have 3 more matchy sweatsuits. Like, you know, I'm trying to like make the masks thing be a little bit cuter. Like, can I accessorize my mask with my socks? You know, so I feel like in the same vein, it's been interesting to see how art has had to adjust, and how the precarity around being an artist also has to figure out its own. Like Filipinos have a dance, a standard move called sway and balance. So very much like the bamboo. So, you know, from living room auditions to stop motion sets and Samuel Harps Skye dance and Juliana Roth self-made man, but also phone negotiations and bedside monologues in Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah's film, as well as again with Skye dance, and just, but then also the phone negotiation with Susan Hamovitch's 3 conversations in April. Like there were a lot of phone conversations in the films, and like what does that mean in terms of like our relationships or relationality, and what it is, you know, our desire to connect, but then in the face of isolation. And then also the world on fire. So I felt like that was a very strong strong in Burn Down Babylon, as well as the Pratt in the Hat, and also just like creativity amongst chaos, and what does it mean to create music and to sing in the ruins of something that has been built and then broken down again. And I feel like we're just sort of I think that it would be a little premature to say that we're in a metamorphosis moment, but I definitely feel like we are, like what poet Kamau Brathwaite used to call the sycorax. We're definitely submerged in something and are coming up in different ways. And so I think like I sort of experienced everybody's film sort of as these like, breaths of fresh air, or breaths of like, but also this deep longing to connect, this deep longing that we are submerged in mass death in so many ways, so much loss, so much grief, so much mourning, but what are the signs of life that artists offer us? What are the signs of life that these films offer us? So for me, I'm most interested in asking, two things, their process, about the process, like what was it like to make your first film? What are the ways that the genre of art that you are most sort of fluent in? How does it inform the art that you made, that you shared with us for this program? What has your main takeaway been from the film process? So I also just invite you to allow for this moment to be a space for you to process with a generous community. And then, can you guys hear me okay? I feel like I sound like a frog, but I can't guarantee that when I don't have a cold, I sound much different. I'm pretty contra alto in my, anyway. And then the other question I wanted to ask was just sort of, what is the lesson that you hope is on the hearts of those who view your work? And then also just like what are your influences? What are the aspects that really guided you in your decision making? So I know that's a whole bunch of different things, but I feel like of the things that you want to share. So should I just begin with the first? Okay, so I'm going to go in the same order as the films itself chronologically, and Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah. Okay, first I'm just going to fangirl out and just say that I'm super excited to talk to you, and I'm super excited to share space with you. The first time I saw you speak publicly was actually when I brought my kids with me to the George Floyd rally in Spring Valley. We were not to get, like, you were on the stage and I was in the audience. Right. I remember at that moment being like, this brother, and your stories break my heart every page, and I have to figure out ways to patch it back up, but you help with that too. But so I just wanted to ask sort of like about Dear Manager. And like I said, I felt like, thinking my brother's a professional musician too. And so if he's like, and we're about like, we're kissing 40, and it's not like, he's like, I guess I have to do Instagram stuff. Like there's like a point of him. So I guess I just wanted to ask you, and I enjoyed your conversation with Shar Adrias, who's like a dear comrade of mine from last year. And I remember you asked her, how does her choreography influence her filmmaking? And so I sort of want to ask you a similar question, like how does your experience and your muscles as like an author, how did that shape this film? And what was most fun about creating it?
Yeah. First, thank you so much. I really appreciate all those kind words. It means a lot to me. And so in making Dear Manager, I relied a lot on my I guess, storytelling background in prose I'm an author. In that, like, I wanted a sense of a character arc that was clear, but I also wanted it to not be like hit over your head, like he was sad and now he's happy, And I also want to sort of like realistically reflect a space that I understand. My favorite part of the video is the very beginning. That's sort of like, early morning grinding at a desk or somewhere. I think a lot of people in the creative space understand that feeling. And so that created like an emotional, like, opening for us. And so, I think my writing sort of background helps me a lot in like the pre-planning stages, which is like a lot of the work for me is like a director, I feel like. Started hitting beats I know I want to hit. And then, the thing that another way in which writing has helped me is the things that it lacks, which filmmaking gives me access to, which is the chance to work with sort of other people. And so I really liked that I got to work with, and Alex, I don't know if you want to speak, Alex Phillip, the director of photography for the video, was here. I got to work with him, and he also, is a photographer first, maybe, and then, ended up being the director of photography for the video, but that was also a great chance. It got to sort of collaborate in a way that I don't normally get to do with my fiction. But I don't know if Alex, if you want to say anything about sort of the process for you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm on the road, so I don't want to throw my video on it. You probably can't even see me anyway. But yeah, this video was kind of an opportunity to take my ability of just telling a story visually. Whenever I listen to a soundtrack to anything or whatever it may be, there's usually a visual stimuli that comes along with that, and this kind of allows you to flex those muscles and kind of put onto a screen what it is that you have in your mind. And although this was our first video, it almost felt like it wasn't. There was something about it that felt natural about it. It felt as though it was meant to happen. It was about time that we told our story visually. Yeah, and just like real quick before we went, like we did it really like in one night. Me, Alex, one other dude, and the rapper, and we all know each other. And me and Alex live with each other, so there was a lot of just natural energy, and it was fun to like do something with someone, which I think a lot of us were longing for in this particular period.
No, I love the opening scene too. I thought it was great.
Thank you so much.
And I'll ask it towards the end, but I want to know if it's connected to the other project, the secret rap project.
This is the first time anyone that's not like I don't live with has mentioned that to me. It isn't overtly, but it super is, because Mike is like sort of has become the co-star of that. The rapper in that video is also an engineer, and he's helping me with my sort of diving into music. But also music is also another one of these things where in pandemic, I feel like I felt really thirsty for doing work that I knew for the most part nobody would care about, if that makes sense. Writing, obviously writing is like where like my background is and what I do, but I really was longing to do something new and fresh that felt kind of like random and that wouldn't have a lot of attention. And I think Secret Rap Project is a lot of that. Appreciate it a lot though.
Yes, no doubt. And I'm excited for when the next iteration will arrive in Rivertown again.
Coming soon.
Yes. Okay, so Susan Hamovitch, I have just similar questions. Like, one of my questions is just like why conversations can happen in multiple ways. It could be a dialogue between two people sitting next to each other, but what was why the choice for the conversations to be on a phone?
Oh, the phone came first.
The phone was very much a character.
No choice. This was a moment, for anybody who hasn't seen the film, I was calling my brother, who does not have the ability to speak. He's autistic and intellectually disabled. And he was in quarantine. He had tested positive with COVID and lives in a group home. And all of a sudden, for the first time in his life, he was alone. And I thought, oh my God. So the first time in my life, I called him on the phone. And I had no idea if he was going to even know that it was me, or be able to process words over the phone. I never know what he understands of what I say. But as you know, if you talk to anybody, and I know this is going to sound weird, excuse me in advance, if you talk to your pet, cat, dog, turtle, fish, you talk in English with expression, And you kind of don't bank on anyone listening to you as you say, oh, you know, what a beautiful day it is, Fluffy. And it's in that vein that you talk to a person who doesn't speak. And I knew I just had to reach out to him. And because I'm a filmmaker, I also knew I had to record this. And I didn't know it was going to be a film. I just knew I had to make a record of it. So the phone conversation was the very first thing that happened. And then because you're on a camera, because of technology today, I can actually record myself. So I just, you know, hit the video function and began recording.
Thank you. And I know that I know that you in the introduction had mentioned wanting to raise awareness around well, not simply just autism, but also those who communicate non-verbally. And so I guess I just wanted to ask if there was anything in terms of us as a community, if there were any resources or anything that you wanted to point us towards in helping lift that.
There's so many communities when you talk about intellectual disability, but I would say that the one I reached out to, the one I feel closest to, is a sibling community. I just want to give a shout out to Anne Guthrie if she's still here.
Yes, I see her name.
Anne was one of the seminal figures in sort of the sibling community, because siblings of people with disabilities, particularly what we call ID and DD, have a particular story of their own. You know, and many of us, mostly women, but not exclusively, you know, become caretakers of our siblings when our parents have passed, and often take it very, very, I mean, I would kill to protect my brother. And a lot of people say, oh, you're such a good sister. I say, I love him, you know? And so I hope that comes through. I often sound ridiculous. I mean, it's very difficult to include yourself in a film doing everyday things. I think I sound absolutely ridiculous. You know, I'm so cheerful, and no matter what I'm saying, I'm like at a high pitch. I can't stand the video of myself, just like nobody can stand it. But that was, you know, I figured that had to be in there. That fact that I got wound up, I got hyper cheerful, even though inside I was very, very afraid for him. But I just want to say one more thing is the other person in the film, there's a very prominent third person, and that's the what we call direct care staff, direct DSP. I'm blanking on what the DSP stands for, direct staff professional, I believe. And these are the people who work in the group homes, and who were terrified that they would also get COVID. They were treated pretty shabbily by the state of New York in terms of PPE and protection and paid time off, not. And so I wanted to portray also my almost inability to reach out to them at the same time as I was trying to reach out to my brother. So they are also a voiceless character. And so that's the threesome of people who really can't express themselves, including me. We're all doing a pretty repressed attempt at expression.
Yes, thank you. And I think that's also why the dance was such a nice release at the end during the credits. And I feel like the dance is a good segue to Skye's dance. So thank you for sharing that, Susan. So for Skye's dance, I would just ask a similar question, you know, around your experience of making the film and what you feel like was your main takeaway. Like I said, I feel like I danced a lot in my living room in the past year. I think that was my main cardio actually. But just sort of like, what were your, was your intention to sort of do, why did you select a dancer as opposed to a musician? Or even just, if you could just share a bit about your process.
Sure. Thanks again for having me. I'm excited to be here. And in brief, our theater, I'm a playwright. And of course, theater is more than just on stage. It's that human connection, the hugging, the kissing, the audience, the clapping. So suddenly, of course, with COVID, our last performance in February for Black History Month, and 2 weeks later, there was COVID and no stage. And for months, I actually didn't know what to do. I mean, I was literally like most people, I was literally stunned. And then George Floyd happened, and I suddenly had something I wanted to write about it, but I had no outlet. Again, I'm a playwright and I needed the stage. Some people over at Irvington Town Hall Theater called and asked what I was doing during the pandemic, because they had an incubator series and I had nothing at all, but I had a camera, a very small camera, and I wanted to do something. So the first couple of films I did was on the Black Lives Matter thing. But I mean, think about it. You have a pandemic on one end and you have racial strife and systemic racism on the other. And, there's which one to choose. So the first couple was on the Black Lives Matter movement, in a sense, African-American police officer. But I chose a dancer because, being an artist, I wanted to explore what it felt like, that isolation of not being able to express your soul creatively. And I chose a dancer because a musician, you can hear, a playwright, you can read and, see the characters, but a dancer I chose. So I took, put out an ad, look for an actress who can dance in New York City. And because no actors were able to work, no dancers were able to dance, I got over 80 submissions and was able to choose an incredible dancer and actress, a Shakespearean actress, to do it. And then came the problem of how there was no standards yet on safety, so it was just so many variables. So it needed to be one character, and we had to use Zoom. And I wasn't a huge fan of all of the electronics in the Zoom, but it's all we had. And being a natural storyteller, suddenly having a camera in my hand, my first love 30 years ago was photography, but now it's a whole new medium. It's a whole new thing. It's a whole new thing. Suddenly, we had two things up on YouTube, and more people saw our first film than saw everything we did on stage for the whole year of 2019 in one day. So we figured, wow, maybe we have something here. So it just freed me, being able to write a story and have people see it. My mom saw my work for the first time because she could sit at home in Virginia and look at it, So it was, it changed for me. I can't wait, of course, until theater comes back, but this is a definite good second fiddle, if you will.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And, I think one of the things about dance is that, and I have a background in dance, is it's about your relationship to space. So I thought that was really interesting too, just sort of even things like the detail around the firewood and how she had to sort of maneuver around it, or just maneuver around her furniture, I thought was really interesting. Right. And definitely made me think about just the sort of the claustrophobia of the quarantine, of the feeling like, oh my gosh, I can't even go to the grocery store without feeling like I'm risking something.
Exactly.
But of course, with the privilege of having a grocery store to get to and ability. But thank you for that. And I look forward to your return to the stage too.
Yeah.
So Juliana, for Self-Made Man, I appreciated in your introduction about you saying that you felt like you were taking yourself too seriously. So it was time to have just sort of some fun. And so can you just tell me about how did Clay come about? And also just I thought that was hilarious, the little political dig around American nationalism and just sort of like bootstraps fallacies, but I also felt like it wasn't too heavy-handed, like it didn't necessarily veer into that. But can you just tell us a bit about what was exciting about making this project, or anything that any surprises along the way?
Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it and caught those things. It was interesting to do it because it was just like a minute and a half. So like the time constraint was one thing that was fun to work with. Like I just knew that I couldn't do a longer story than like what I could do with a minute, just nature of time and like doing stop motion. And I think the moment that I made it, it was like I had finished my MFA in like fiction and poetry like right before the pandemic. And I like felt myself ready to move from like emerging into artists. And I felt just like really shocked, like a lot of people, because it was like losing the community that I had been in like for 3 years, and then all of a sudden like being alone in this new way. And so I felt like the way I was getting through it was just like creating a lot. Sorry, Ziggy's like trying to say hi. Speaking of silly, yeah, so I was just trying to like create a lot or like generate a lot, and it just like was making me have this kind of like toxic relationship I felt with my creativity. And it reminded me of like the bootstrap theory, or like self-made man, like you can just, the more you put in, the more you'll get. And I think there's some truth to that with creativity, but also like I was missing that playful thing. So I was honestly forced to slow down. Like I had to get surgery this summer, and I was on my mom's couch, and that's when I made the shorter, like I had the Sculpey around, so I was just playing around, and like yeah, it was just fun. And I asked a friend for a song, and then that made the editing process really fun, because I didn't plan ahead the music. Like usually I have a sense of the song I want to use when I'm making a film. So that was just like a surprise that happened. That was like really playful for me. And yeah, so I'm glad you enjoyed it.
No, thank you. And I feel like what you mentioned also reminds me of something that Nana had said earlier in terms of like risk and sort of the freedom of being in a new sort of medium, that you give yourself permission to try, and that when you don't that there isn't actually a failure in it, because you don't know what that is. You know, within a new space, that there's another layer of openness, I think.
Yeah, that's so true. And it's like I didn't have a script or anything like that too. So I love that idea you're talking about, of risk or play, where you're like, just have to go with what's like instinctual or associative, which is like.
No, I definitely watched it like 2 or 3 times. Like, okay, I think it was, and it was very blink and you'll miss it. But I like the guy, like the end when he's sitting. I thought that was really funny.
On his cat, yeah.
Yeah. Now I'm chilling. And then like was that your foot? But that's,
yeah, I had to like have something, and I was like, it was literally just me alone in my mom's house. So I was like, I'm the only other person here, so I have to like be the foot in this.
No, I think that knowing that you had surgery, and I'm glad to hear you're recovering, and it was called Self-Made Man and made out of clay, I think actually adds a different layer to it in terms of like, you know, our body, is it pliable? I feel like I'm not sure all the time. Anyway, but thank you, Juliana. And I just want to keep so for the Pratt in the Hat with Susan Hilary Shapiro. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really enjoyed. I remember when the exhibition was up, which was like 2 years ago, or was it 2 years ago in Nyack? So it was really. I don't quite remember, but I guess my question would be very similar in terms of like, I love that you were able to help all of us as a community to give Frances Pratt her flowers while she is here with us, and while we can really continue to ask her questions about her story. What are the ways that I guess I would just ask, you know, if there was a particular aspect of the film that surprised you in the making of it, or if there are particular things that you want your audiences to take from it?
Well, we know Frances Pratt and her beautiful hats, and the colors of her hats are just exquisite. What happened was I don't know, it was not related to that exhibition whatsoever. That exhibition is not related to this film. We happened to shoot it because it happened to be during the time of when I was shooting, but we shot it over I think we had two like half days of live shoot, and the rest of it was actually all stills on an iPhone. The majority of the film is all stills on an iPhone. And because what happened was when we first started shooting it, she was changing her clothes and her hats, and it just was too much. And it was too physically challenging. And she ended up, I don't think it was the reason, but around that time, she ended up with pneumonia in the hospital. So we took a big break and we weren't shooting for a while until she got strong. And then when we came back, I realized that we couldn't have her changing her outfits all the time, even though they all go with the hats. So we just really had her changing her shirts, and I did the stills basically on an iPhone, on a psych in her house, very simply. And she has been really enjoying this process, I have to be honest. So this is my first film in 20 years. I hadn't made really a film in 20 years. It's my first documentary. My background's feature films. And so it was really, for me, a very pleasurable thing to actually make a film again. And I give a lot of thanks to Rivertown and Matthew for pushing me to get it done, because I sort of was dragging on the whole process. But COVID helped with that also, because I was home, I was able to edit it with editors remotely, and it worked out pretty well. But for Frances, it's been this really wonderful experience. It's been getting into a lot of film festivals. They flew us out to San Diego for a film festival where they treated her like, she was a celebrity, and it was really lovely. But I think for me, the important part of the film, and always was her hats and the colors and the sculptural shapes. And I'm a painter. And to me, that's what this film was always about. And I didn't want to follow her around at her thousands of activities and her advocacy. And that was an easy documentary to make, a sort of a standard documentary. Oh, this amazing woman, she does all these things. And I really want to reveal her story through the grace that she has with those hats, and the style that she presents with her advocacy. She uses her hats in a way as a method of being an advocate, which is a unique thing. And I think in this time of strife that we're all going through, and really dark times in a lot of ways, to have like this, she's almost a shining flower for us to see there's another way to go about this. You can go about this with grace, and make sure that you're sitting at the table, make sure you have a voice, and make sure you're present in the process. Roger, shot a part of it for one of the half days, and I appreciate that. But yeah, I think that I hope that's what people take away from it, is that perseverance through strife.
Susan, I hate to break in, but we have some people here we're not from Rockland County. Can you explain who Frances Pratt is in just a sentence or two?
Sure. Okay. Well, first of all, I want to say about me before I get into Frances. I was born in Nyack. My father was born in Nyack. We're like an old Rockland County family. So Frances came to Nyack in 1957, and she has been the president of the NAACP for 40 years. And she is a woman who has really, the NAACP of Nyack, I should say, for 40 years. And she has really led the way with a lot of things nationally as well. She's been very connected to, national groups and national issues during that time. Nyack has changed a lot in the 40 years. It was a community that was, when I grew up in Nyack, it was very depressed. I don't know if anyone else grew up here at that time, but it was a very different community than it is today. It really became a gentrified community. And she lived through all that and all those changes and continued to persevere. So Frances is this very well-spoken and very clear, strong-minded individual who, I don't know what else I should say about Frances, but that's who she is.
Thank you. And thank you. And I would also point folks towards the, was it a debut? I remember looking at a conversation that was on Rivertown's queue, but that was also really exciting too, to see the film discussion. I think it was in March or something. So I just wanted to invite the audience to check that out also.
What that was it was for Black History Month. So it wasn't finished at that point, but
Okay.
Matthew really wanted to get it out there and to show it. So it was before it was really finished. We made some changes. We did a lot of actual sound editing and moved. For me, I still want to move the hats around. The hats are like, you know, it's no one else notices it, I don't think, but I notice where the hats are and like, oh,
No,
that
there needs to be a runway situation. I feel like we need to actually experience the, you know, all of it at once in some ways, even though I don't know what that would be like. But I feel like but I definitely feel like the message in terms of like how style is a form of resistance, that style and self-representation and fashion have always been a part of social movement building. Like, you know, whether or not it was ties and button-ups and hats, or a uniform, whether or not, you know, like black berets and black leather, you know, that there are ways that fashion has always had a place in social justice movements and continues to be that way. And I think it's also tied very much to church movements versus also movements that are closer, or not closer, but that are grassroots organization driven, that there are different things. Oh yes, that's right. Pussy hats.
she's taking the hat out of the church. You know, she wears her hats everywhere. So she's really taken the hat and brought the church to everyone with her. Yeah.
I had actually brought one of my favorites just in honor of. And so then I feel like let us move to Burn Down Babylon, but thank you so much, Susan. So Machan Taylor, am I saying that correctly? Oh, I cannot hear you.
Sorry, I was muted. Machan.
Machan, wonderful to meet you, Machan.
Thank you.
And you had such a luminous presence in the film.
Oh.
And also, let's see. Oh, and Roger Grange and Vera Aronow. So that's those are the
and
three.
also Danny Lewis.
Danny Lewis, and also Danny Lewis. I don't think. Okay, wonderful. So I feel like the film felt super apocalyptic in a way. Like it was just like it telescoped out. It started in sort of like, there was a part that actually felt triumphant in the intro, and then it was like, uh-oh. So it's going to turn into something else. And so I guess I just wanted to ask about the process and about how, you know, thinking about the storyline or the arc. And I remember hearing in your introduction the many instruments that Danny performed with, and so even just thinking about the musical aspect of building the song, and as well as the different visuals, and just what were some of the aspects that sort of guided you to sort of make it into this sort of a global snapshot.
Well, you know, like everybody here, we were in lockdown, and you know, it was really the first time that Danny and I, in our 23-year relationship, were actually together 24/7 in such a different way, because Danny is in a band called Government Mule, and he's normally on the road touring 6-7 months out of the year. So, you know, we were feeling the pressure cooker of not only the pandemic, but suddenly our relationship was in a new perspective, a new place. But it also was giving us an opportunity to write some music together. So obviously the song came first before the video. And Danny, who is incredible multi-instrumentalist, Danny, you can speak for yourself too, but we, we just kind of came up with this groove idea, and I kind of took it away to my office and started writing the lyrics and the melody. And I think, with everything that was going on, which several people have already spoken about, the pressure cooker of, and I'm sorry if there's any Trumpers here, but for me, it was really, it was really just insanely upsetting what was going on with the government, with then the pandemic, with social justice, and all of the things that were happening. It just felt like, to me, the fall of the Roman Empire is coming. And that's really what the song is hinting to, in that, we were sort of witnessing this disintegration of our society, of our culture, and everything that we have known to be secure and safe. And it was crumbling, just like the history of so many stories of our human civilization. History repeats itself. And so that's really kind of where the lyric ideas and the visuals came from. And I want to let Vera and Roger and Danny speak too. Maybe Danny, you want to talk a little bit about the musical process and hand it over? You're on mute.
Mute. Is that?
There you are.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having us. The music end of it was, as you said, pre-video, and it really started laying in a hammock, didn't it?
Oh, yeah. Right.
And I was playing with the cords that hold the actual hammock. They were over my head, and I was playing this na 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 like that, and I kind of got the idea for a groove and a song, and put the track together and kicked it upstairs to you, and you ran with it. But when you announced that it was going to be a video, to me, I thought, maybe it should get a little more cinematic before it gets into the rock and roll, and that's kind of what explains the history of the world that occurs before Machan starts singing, the musical history of the world. The idea being that, we started crawling out of the primordial slime and evolving and getting our erector set and building and building and building. And here we are, where are we going? And that's kind of the musical story behind the song. There's actually a prequel to that Machan didn't want to use, maybe for good reason, called Stab the Goat. And it was a musical sort of story of superstition and the darker ages before we reached this wonderful pinnacle of civilization. And maybe someday we'll add that to the front of Burn Down Babylon, so it's the opus it could eventually become.
So,
and that's basically the story. Other than that, technically we have a basement studio where all my toys are, and I tried to use every one of them on this.
And then some, I think. But yeah. But so just to kind of move it forward and pass it over to Roger and Vera, a friend of mine, when I had this idea for the video and really the visual story of the song, obviously being a musician and that being my world and my strength, I don't have any equipment or gear to make film, and I wanted to really see it done properly and not just on my iPhone, me not knowing what I'm doing. So luckily I was blessed with Roger's phone number, and I called him And I very meekly said, well, I don't know if you can do this for us, but can you maybe help us make a video? And he was so gracious and brought Vera into the process too. So maybe you want to take it from here, Roger.
Well, I was in the car and I got this call from Machan. I was on a long drive, so we had plenty of time to talk. But she kind of described what she wanted to do, and she mentioned she wanted to intercut the performance with stock footage and archival footage and so forth. So I really never edited anything like that before, but I'm pretty good at shooting musical performances. So we got that part done. And we had a lot of fun filming at that brick factory in, where was it? Kingston.
In Kingston.
And then the whole process of editing, it was like back and forth. We did a bunch of Zoom meetings, and Machan got a license on a stock footage site, and she kept sending, pieces of stock footage for us to look at. So it went back and forth, and I was editing, and Machan was solidifying kind of the storyline that she and Danny were thinking of, and they would hone it down and get it closer and closer to what they wanted. It was great because we didn't really know exactly how to proceed in the beginning, but they really kind of nailed it, and then we kind of worked together to finalize it. It turned out great, and then Danny came up with a final music track that was quite more embellished than the original tune. So it was really something to hear the different versions of the music come in. It was great to hear.
Yeah, it was definitely a work in progress.
Well, fortunately, he never changed the length. I mean, we had a sync mark that we had to stick to at the beginning when we shot it, and he kept it the same length, so everything stayed in sync, even though he added pieces of, different instruments to it. But that made it all kind of stay in sync the whole time.
Yeah, I think what is so lovely is that here we are coming from different mediums, different worlds, but yet finding a way to really work together to bring the vision alive. And that was such a nice experience with you guys.
Yeah,
it's really
it was
wonderful.
Fun. It was really fun.
Yeah.
And thank you so much.
I want to do more.
That'd be great. I'll just mention one thing that I thought was funny was like you said at the beginning, it was very much about Trump, and it got going with that idea in mind. And when we started thinking about what visuals to choose, we thought about a lot of Trump visuals. But you said that, oh no, I don't want Trump to be in the video. So we were like, oh, okay, we'll have to figure out another way to do this. So, which I can totally respect. So we had to purge any images of Trump from the cut, but he only makes it in these clever ways, like as a balloon, as a Humpty Dumpty, and Danny came up with some costumes, the golfer and the pharaoh and so on, that sort of speak about Trump.
Yeah, the idea of what he was doing was kind of fascism 101 if you go back through history. And I suppose there's going to be 104 and 105 until we figure out that we actually are a collective, and that the system needs to actually take care of people who need to be taken care of. So we didn't really want to get bagged too heavily in the moment. And that's the difference when you listen to a song that talks about the fashion of the day and feels like a nostalgia piece, or when you listen to a song and a lyric that is more metaphorical and more universal, but covers those dynamics that tend to repeat over time.
Yes, and I would also say too that I think that part of the strength of the video was that the nature, the naturalistic moments. I feel like, especially as we are all enduring the violence of climate change, and the ways that Mother Earth is like, hold my beer. The Mother Earth is like, yo, so you thought that you could just abuse me and that I wasn't gonna bite back, and just the ways that, in thinking about the idea of a system taking care of us, what about the ecosystem and the broader planet, and what are the systems that we were born of and with, that could take care of each other, and ways that we could protect each other. Because I do feel like the one thing I will say about COVID is the ways that it was almost like a hyper exposure in terms of film about, how fake money is and how labor is a construction too. And I'm not just trying to like end on a Marxist tip, but shout out to Marx. But also to also just think about, what does it mean to continue to create? What does it mean to like thinking about Frances Pratt and what she has lived through? What does it mean for her to then wear a super fly hat walking down Main Street, or like near the hospital where she helped change and healed people? But I feel like, but then also just thinking about all of the disparities between. So I know that we only have a couple more minutes left, so I just wanted to open up the space to other voices that are here, and to again thank everybody for their creations and the willfulness to share it with all of us. And I also just want to do a quick shout out to the Philippine X Solidarity Collective. We're a recent organization, and I see that two of my sisters are on the call, Shar and Maria Marasigan. So anyway, but yeah, if there's anybody who has any other questions that hasn't been able to speak, I see Connie has raised her hand.
Thank you. Well, once again, this program is just extraordinary, and the opportunity to sit with you all and hear about how you made the films and your motivations, it's just absolutely fabulous. And now that having seen motion 1 and now motion 2, I have a question about how the decisions were made, what to put in which group. And I would love to hear somebody speak about that. But first, I also want to say, that the themes, we've said this word several times, perseverance. And that really came to me in the video of Mr. Adjei-Brenyah, where the rap musician decided that he would call the manager and come back, and I love that. And then in Skye Dancer, where the director of this program says, I can't remember if it was if or when, but even if it was when, I could feel if we come back based on what's happening in the pandemic world, so you're just, there's hope and there's, some doubt. So I just appreciated you. Again, it's so much. Thank you. And I'm interested in how it was put together.
Thank you.
Appreciate that, Connie. Thank you very much.
I'm going to let Juliana talk about how the decision was made, what film to put in part 1 and how to shape the programs. But I just wanted to say, is Kathryn Valentina here?
Yes, she is here. They're here. Hi. I'll take 1 second to answer that question and then hand the floor over, because I know they didn't have a chance to speak yet. But basically, I grouped it because I did the edit for it. So I tried to make an even amount of time. Like, time was one constraint. They're each about an hour long. And the first program to me kind of dropped us into like surrealness. Like there was a science fiction one and some that dealt with linguistics. So I felt like that kind of linked those films together. And then the programs for tonight as like the follow-up felt like moving us towards like maybe more arguments in the films, as well as like, I don't know, I feel like it ends on not like a clear positive note, but also a message to like persevere, like you're saying, or to keep creating. So that was like editorially what was happening, but also time was a constraint for making sure the programs were about the same length and the films are random times. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I see Anne Guthrie has her hand up.
Or I don't know, Kapwa, if you saw that Kathryn from
Oh,
Meow,
yes.
Meow, Deadbeat
Oh, yes.
is here. I don't know if you still
Oh,
wanted to speak.
Sure. Sorry, I'm congested.
Okay, you gave it, yeah.
I'm talking. Like, I think I should just embrace this voice and just go with it. Okay. So I guess, Kathryn, welcome to the community and to tonight's event. One of the things I was just asking about were if there was something that you wanted to share about your process that was particularly surprising or exciting, or anything about the film that you wanted to illuminate.
I'd like to apologize, first of all, for how informal this, it looks like I'm on FaceTime with y'all right now. But I left my computer at the radio station. So I was like trying to figure out how to download Zoom and join this discussion, because all of you have such intricate explanations and beautiful motivations behind your work, because clearly this is your passion. I I didn't expect this to be submitted anywhere. The band definitely is my passion, but our main person working with us, Norvin Van Dunk, submitted it on behalf of me. So if I had known the caliber of work I was going to be put up in the same brackets with, maybe I should have stepped it up a notch. Because really this was my first kind of time directing and publishing things. I mean, I had kind of haphazardly done comedy sketches before, but nothing as, like, I guess, organized as this. But I'm really so inspired hearing all of you speak about your works. Really, it's so wonderful to hear everybody speak.
Thank you. And Anne?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, but I have no working camera, so that's fine with me. Anyway, no, I just want to say because I've known Susan for decades, I saw her film. I can't wait to watch the others because they sound so terrific. But I also want to give a shout out to Rivertown Film. Rockland County was my home for a little while. I'm in Seattle now. And this is a terrific thing you've put on. It's also rather appropriate as far as Susan goes, because her brother Alan, who was featured in the film, spent too many years at Letchworth Developmental Center that closed down there. But anyway, they all sound like terrific films. Susan gave a shout out to me. I want to give a shout out back to her. We haven't seen each other in way too long. So I think I don't really have any questions. I just really wanted to congratulate you for, hello, Susan. Congratulate y'all for all these wonderful films that you've submitted, and they sound amazing. Susan, I'll catch up to you another time.
You bet.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry about I feel like my last response to Kathryn, I just wanted to also say that I loved the fashion in your film. I thought that was super fun. So I don't know how we close, but I feel like we're coming to that space.
Yeah, yes. Does anyone else have any more questions? I just want to say one more thing. Susan Hamovitch has a feature-length documentary about her relationship with her brother, which I had the privilege of seeing. Susan, tell us what the name of that is. It's a very moving film.
I just want to ask, did you see it recently?
I saw it. A former board member of Rivertown has a friend who walks with your brother over in Rockland County, and that's how I got to see a DVD of the film. And she told me about you, and that's how I reached out to you when I saw that this video, that you had this short.
Oh, you're talking about Laurie. Yes.
And what is the name of your
film? The name of the film, thank you so much for mentioning it, it's without apology.
Right. Thank
And
you.
it's really the story of my life. You know, I guess a lot of artists who work in a linear, time-wise linear form do write the story of their life or film the story of their life. That's their first work. And that certainly was mine. So that's the story of, a man, a boy growing up who never speaks. And that's my brother. And I'm a senior citizen. And so going way back, options for people like him who don't speak, who have autism, were none. And so as Anne said, they would almost, not always, I would say half of people like that wound up at institutions. And Rockland County had one of the first in New York State. 1911, it was built in Teals, right there. And so that's why it really feels like Rockland has been my shadow home, because we would go up and in bad old days, the 60s, you didn't talk about your family member who had disabilities. So many things you didn't talk about, and that was one. So we would go to Rockland County every month. I thought it was beautiful. We would hike a little bit in Harriman State Park, and then we would scurry home and not tell a soul. And so it's the evolution from that period in social history of disability to the present. And it's a little plug, it is visible for viewing on Vimeo. If the quality isn't good enough for you, I had to transfer it from a DVD and something got lost there. So if you want a DVD, just get in touch with me.
Thank you, Susan. Especially for people who have family members with disabilities like that. It's very moving. Thank you. And it's a big part of Rockland history. That was an important
major employer, I think.
Right.
And for a long time, it employed thousands.
Right. So this is how we wrap it up, I think. And yes, we can talk about next upcoming events for Rivertown and the Filipinx Collective. I know Solidarity Collective. Rivertown has a film starting next week, a documentary based on the hidden life of trees. So that's exciting. And Cornell Cooperative is a community partner with us. And so please stay connected with our e-news so you can tell what's coming up. And Kapwa, did you or someone else want to say something about the collective?
Sure. No, I was just going to say that after Vera reached out to me, one of the things I had mentioned is that October is Filipino American History Month. And there have been so many exciting sort of a renaissance within Filipino American culture around foodways, but also films. And so I'm hoping that we'll be able to do sort of a small kind of moment, one of the Wednesdays next month. So please stay tuned for that. It's not finalized. We're still kind of figuring that out, but I just wanted to open up the space for that. And then maybe in closing, one of the ways that we end our meetings is isang bagsak. I'm going to write it down. Okay. Isang bagsak. And it means one down, and it means one down, one step closer to liberation. So this gathering, I would like to even though I was kind of joking, but that's how we have to do it. We have to make it a little bit of a smile with it while we hold our machete. So if everybody can do a little isang bagsak, it means so we're going to do one step closer to liberation. I'll say isang bagsak, and then we clap in unity. And like I said, I know that it can sort of sound like crazy when we unmute, but I will invite you to unmute so that we can at least feel the vibration of wherever you are. So thank you again, everybody, for this moment together to help us burn down Babylon together. We will chant. After this, I will hear the vibration of your chant and the vibrations of our isang, our clap together. So all together, isang bagsak. Yes. Okay. Much love to everybody. Thank you again so much.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Thank you for
Thanks,
making these
everyone.
films.
Big love, everybody.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Thank you so
Love.
much.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
It was great.